I was just 18 at the time, too young and too damn stubborn for my own good. My town, Wellsboro, is the gateway to some of the most secluded and rugged forest areas in Pennsylvania. I wanted to camp alone, real camping, not some overpopulated, overpriced campground surrounded by trucks and screaming kids. So I found my own spot, deep in the Pennsylvania wilderness, miles from civilization. It was near an old abandoned site, a place forgotten by most. No rangers, no tourists, no one to tell me where I could or couldn't go. Just me, my tent, and the raw, untamed woods. The very first night it happened to me, around midnight, I fell asleep to the comforting crackle of my dying fire, wrapped in my sleeping bag, feeling untouchable. I was an idiot. Hours later, I woke up. It wasn't the cold that got me. It was the shouting. A man's voice, sharp and angry, booming through the trees. Trespassers get shot. My blood went ice cold. I stayed still, barely breathing, listening. More voices. Heavy boots crushing dry leaves. The snap of branches. Then, through a small gap in my tent flap, I saw them. They were two men, dressed in military-style gear, rifles slung over their shoulders. They weren't casual hunters. These guys moved with purpose, fanning out like they'd done this before. I had seconds to decide. Staying meant death. Slowly, carefully, I slipped out of my sleeping bag, grabbed my boots, and crawled out the back of my tent. I didn't dare stand. My heart pounded so hard I swore they could hear it. I crept into the woods, every step agonizingly slow, my breath shallow as I fought the urge to sprint. Then, those men were mean, cruel. I turned back just enough to see them tearing through my campsite. One of them drove a knife straight through my tent, slicing it open like a gutted animal. Another kicked over my cooking gear, sending my supplies scattering into the dirt. My backpack, my food, my water, everything I had brought was being destroyed right in front of me. Then one of them shouted, "She's out there." She can't have gone far. I ran. I didn't care about the silence. Forget stealth. I sprinted into the dark, branches tearing at my clothes. I heard them crashing through the underbrush, laughing, calling out, "Where the hell are you?" I ran until I couldn't hear them anymore, until my legs threatened to give out. Then I dropped, forcing myself into the smallest space I could find, a thick patch of brush, barely enough cover to hide me. I pressed my body into the dirt, biting my lips so hard, willing myself to disappear. Minutes passed, then an hour, but I didn't move. Then came the sound an engine. I turned my head just enough to see them. Two men, armed, riding in a TV, scanning the woods with flashlights, looking for me. I held my breath as they passed. I waited until the sound faded, until they were completely gone. Then I ran again. By the time I reached my car, my entire body was shaking so hard I could barely grip the keys. But it wasn't over yet, because there, tucked under my windshield wiper, was a piece of paper. A note. I unfolded it with numb fingers. The words burned into my mind forever. "This is your only warning. Next time, we will shoot you in the head directly." I got in my car and floored it. I swear, that day, I was inches from death. Honestly, those bastards weren't just trying to scare me. They were there to kill me. I never told the police. I didn't want them as my enemies. I just wanted to stay as far away from that nightmare as possible. It became a trauma that stuck with me. I didn't go camping for years after that. But here's the truth. Those places you think are just deep in the woods, completely isolated, they don't give you time to think. They don't give you a chance to save your life. That night, it was nothing but pure luck that they didn't find me. I think some places don't belong to you. They belongs to only cruel damn people with no patience and no mercy. I was 16, young and stupid. My parents had warned me 1,000 times not to wander too far into the woods, but that night I didn't care. Mason, my close friend, we had planned this before. A night of freedom. Just us, a tent, and the endless trees. No rules. We set up camp just beyond the edge of town, far enough that the streetlights were swallowed by the forest, but close enough that we could still run home if things went wrong. Or so we thought. The woods were different at night. We told ghost stories, the way kids do, trying to scare each other into flinching at every snapped twig. But then, at around 9 p.m., the woods went quiet. No wind, just silence. Mason swore he saw something moving in the trees, and I laughed, calling him paranoid. But then, a sound. Footsteps. They started 30 feet away, slow at first, then faster. Heavy. Deliberate. A man crashed through the underbrush, his breath ragged, his face slick with sweat. He looked wild, mid-40s, maybe, with a scruffy beard and a thick jacket covered in dirt. "Please," he gasped, clutching his chest. "My dog," he ran off. "I can't find him. Can you help?" Mason shifted beside me. "We should stay here," he muttered. But the man's voice cracked. "He's just a pup. Please, I can't lose him." His voice was desperate, but there was something beneath it, something off. A flicker in his gaze, a tension in his jaw. I should have said no, but we didn't. Against every instinct, I nodded. "All right, but we can't go far." Mason shot me a look, but he followed. We kept going, deeper and deeper, and a gnawing feeling crept up my spine. I knew we were going too far, that this could be dangerous. The only sounds were the crunch of our footsteps and the man's uneven breathing as he called out for Duke. Then, the man, he stopped. Dead silence. A second later, his voice called out, "I found him. Over here." Relief flooded me. I took a step forward. Mason grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in. "Wait." His voice was a blade sharp, urgent. We rounded the brush, then froze. What we saw sent an icy chill down our spines. He stood there, completely naked. There was no dog. A slow, twisted grin spread across his face as he let out a low, eerie laugh. "I lied to you guys," he said, his tone shifting, no longer panicked, no longer desperate. "Hungry." My blood turned to ice. "Run." The word tore from my throat before I could think. We bolted. Branches whipped at my face. Roots snagged my ankles, but we both didn't stop. Didn't dare look back. The man's footsteps pounded behind us, too fast, too close. The forest became a blur, shadows stretching, twisting, the trees seeming to lean in, trapping us. My lungs burned. My legs screamed, but we ran like hell itself was chasing me. Then, maybe 2.5 miles later, we hit the trailhead. Gasping, shaking, alive. The footsteps stopped this time. I didn't trust it. I kept running until my legs gave out, collapsing onto a narrow trail where the trees finally thinned. Mason crashed beside me, his face white, his chest heaving. We stared back into the darkness. Nothing. No man. No sound. Just the woods. We never told anyone. It became a childhood trauma, a scar left by my experience in the wilderness, one that shattered my trust in strangers. Years have passed. I'm older now, wiser, but I still can't bring myself to trust strangers. All I can tell you is this: never follow someone you don't know. Never trust anyone too easily. I'd been planning this trip for months. 2 days alone in the woods, no emails, no traffic, no noise. Just me, my tent, and the silence. My job had been eating me alive, the kind of stress that crawls under your skin and stays there. I needed to disappear, even if just for a weekend. The drive took hours. By the time I parked my truck at the trailhead, the sun hung low, staining the sky orange. No other cars. Perfect. I shouldered my pack, locked the doors, and hiked into the forest. The trail was overgrown, the kind of place that hadn't seen hikers in years. Branches clawed at my sleeves. After an hour, I found a clearing beside a creek, the water so clear I could count the pebbles on its bed. I pitched my tent on a patch of soft earth, hammering the stakes deep. For dinner, I built a small fire, its crackle blending with the creek's murmur. I ate beans straight from the can, watching the flames. No phone, no book, just the weight lifting from my chest. Night fell fast. The woods turned black beyond my fire's glow, the trees dissolving into shadows. I'd forgotten how loud silence could be. I doused the fire, crawled into my tent, and zipped myself into the sleeping bag. For the first time in months, I slept deeply. That night, nothing had happened to me. I woke to sunlight filtering through the tent. I spent the morning exploring following the creek. By afternoon, I'd gathered firewood, stacking it neatly beside the ashes of last night's blaze. I napped in the dappled shade. As dusk approached, I rebuilt the fire, roasting a can of soup on its edge. That's when I heard its footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, crunching over dry leaves. I froze, the spoon halfway to my mouth. Nice spot. The voice came from the tree line. A man stepped into the clearing, tall and broad-shouldered. His flannel shirt stained boots caked in mud. A hunting knife hung from his belt. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Thanks," I said, forcing calm. Didn't realize anyone else was out here. He tilted his head, scanning my camp. "You alone?" The question was a yellow signal first. My pulse thudded in my ears. "Nah, my buddy's fishing downstream. He'll be back soon." A lie, clumsy but necessary. His gaze lingered on my tent, my single sleeping bag. "Oh." He scratched his beard, the knife glinting in the firelight. "Wilderness ain't no place to be careless." I nodded, stirring the soup to hide my shaking hands. After minutes of conversation, he turned and melted back into the trees. I didn't sleep that night. Around 3 a.m., I heard the slow drag of boots circling my tent. I gripped my pocket knife, its blade pitiful against the dark. A shadow passed over the fabric, tall and human. I stopped breathing. I stayed frozen until dawn and nothing happened. I unzipped the flap, half expecting him to be waiting. The fire was burning. I drowned it last night, smothered it with dirt. Yet there it was, flames licking at fresh logs, smoke coiling into the dawn. Someone had been there that night, I was sure of it. Someone had been watching me. Who lit the fire again? Who didn't want me staying there any longer? Or worse, what were their intentions? Oh, God, I don't know. I didn't eat. I shoved my sleeping bag into the pack, kicked dirt over the fire, and ran. I wasn't there anymore within minutes. I left as quickly as I could. That's the story I wanted to share with you. I knew something wasn't right. That person had asked me directly if I was alone, and then he spent the whole night circling and watching me. That day is one I'll never forget. Changed my experience of camping alone forever. My best friend, Lucas, and I had been hiking since early morning that day, pushing deeper into the wilderness than we ever had before. We had talked about this trip for months, an adventure, just the two of us, away from the noise of the city, away from people, away from everything. By late afternoon, my phone had lost service. We had crossed through a dense patch of woods, following a narrow trail that wasn't on any of our maps. Lucas had been thrilled. "That's the whole point," he had said, grinning as he wiped sweat from his brow. "No people, no noise, just us and the trees." We found a clearing just as the sun began to set. A small creek ran nearby, its gentle burbling the only sound aside from the occasional chirp of crickets. The place was perfect. We set up camp, rolling out our sleeping bags and gathering wood for a fire. We were deep in conversation, talking about everything, completely lost in our own world. Then, out of nowhere, we heard it. The crunch sound of boots on dry leaves. Lucas and I froze, glancing at each other. I strained my ears, hoping it was just an animal passing through. But the footsteps were too deliberate, too heavy. From the darkness beyond the firelight, he emerged. A man, tall, unshaven, with a rifle slung over his shoulder. His clothes were worn and dirt-stained. He didn't look angry. He didn't look anything. His expression was unreadable, but his presence sent a wave of unease through my chest. "You boys are on private land," he said. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, something cold underneath. Lucas started to speak, but I could see the way the man's fingers rested near the trigger of his rifle. I nudged him, and we both nodded. No argument, no questioning. Just leave. We packed up in silence, hands shaking as we rolled up the tent and stuffed our gear into our backpacks. He stood there, watching, barely moving, except to shift his weight from one foot to the other. As soon as we started walking back the way we came, I felt his eyes on us. I turned my head slightly, just enough to see him moving. He was following us, not in a rush, not aggressively, but his steps matched ours. Deliberate, calculated. Lucas must have noticed too, because he quickened his pace. I did the same, but the man didn't fall behind. He didn't speed up either. He just kept closing the distance, bit by bit. Then the most shocking was, he called out, "Hey you, stop right there." My blood turned to ice. Lucas and I froze. I didn't want to turn around, didn't want to face whatever came next. But before the man could say another word, the night erupted with a sound so unnatural, so guttural. A growl noise of wolf. Deep, menacing, too close. The man's head snapped toward the trees, his grip tightening on the rifle. In that split second, Lucas grabbed my arm. "Run," he hissed. And we did. We sprinted through the trees. We heard the growling behind us, and somewhere in the distance, a gunshot rang out. Was the man shooting at us? Oh, my God. I didn't look back to find out. The path twisted and turned, but somehow we found our way. Our car was parked miles away. At the edge of the woods, we ran until our bodies ached, until our breath came in ragged gasps, until we saw the dull gleam of the car's metal under the moonlight. We didn't stop. We threw our gear into the back seat, slammed the doors. We never reported it. What would we even say? There were no signs, no markers indicating private land. No proof of the man or whatever had been in the woods with us. But we never went back. Some places don't want visitors. And some men don't just want you to leave you easily.